You are being prevented from awakening. That sentence is not an accusation. It is a description of a condition, a pattern, a practical obstacle that has been at work for centuries. If you feel the urgency in that idea, if a part of you tightens and listens, stay with me. I am here as a guide who has read the fragments they tried to bury, and who has also learned to translate those fragments into bodies and breaths. I will show you how this prevention operates, give you a short, verifiable way to check for your own inner remembering, and invite you to a simple declarative activation that many have found to shift things from inside out. This is not magic promise-making. It is a careful, somatic method for seeing what has been hidden. In the middle of the 20th century, in 1945, a cache of texts was discovered at Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. They were sealed jars, not the kind of documents meant to be read by the many. Inside were writings that did not make it into the later Orthodox collections, writings that present a different conversation about the origin of the soul, about knowledge as remembrance, about a direct access to the divine that bypasses priests, rites, and hierarchical gatekeepers. One of those texts, the Gospel of Philip, speaks of the secret known to those who remember. Scholars label these texts apocryphal and Gnostic, terms that mark them as part of a distinct stream within early Christian thought, not as replacements for canonical scripture. That distinction matters. What we are about to explore sits within that Gnostic frame, a lineage of ideas about direct recognition, about fragments of a primordial source scattered into matter, and about the mechanisms that prevent us from remembering who we are. Why did parts of this conversation get removed from the public ritual of religion? Because self-verification, proof you can find within yourself that you belong to the source, weakens the need for priestly intermediation. If a person can, by simple recognition, know their origin and act from that knowing, then institutions that depend on mediation lose control. This is not a villain story with dramatic gestures. It is a social and psychological process. Over generations, teachings that invited individuals to trust inner signs were marginalized, labeled mysterious, or folded into doctrines that require external authority. Those are the historical stakes. But there is also a metaphysical account within these writings. They describe not only social suppression, but a metaphysical architecture of temporary forgetfulness. In the Gnostic cosmology we'll use here, the monad, the primordial source, emanated spark-like fragments of itself into the field of existence. Those fragments are what some texts call the pneuma, the spirit, that carries recognition of origin. In the process of embodiment, a secondary artisan, called the demiurge in these writings, shaped the material environment. The demiurge is not necessarily a moral caricature. Think of it as an architect who prioritizes structure and fixity, creating a reality that favors attention outward, to objects, to systems, to images, rather than inward, to the living anchor of remembrance. Around that architecture operate intelligences the texts call archontes, patterned influences that settle in thought and attention, and encourage distraction, doubt, and misidentification. Call them forces or call them habitual tendencies. The functional description is the same. They bend the mind away from the inner evidence of origin. Imagine a lamp in a mist. The light is there, pure and bright, but the mist refracts it, dilutes it, makes you think the light is somewhere else. The teachings we are speaking of say that there is a method for wiping the lens, for locating where the light is shining in your own body, and for naming that light in a way that reorients perception. This method is not theoretical. It is somatic and immediate. It asks for breath, touch, and declaration, the simplest instruments we carry. Before we do anything practical, a word of humility and framing. These texts are one stream among many in early spiritual conversation. They offer a perspective that can transform how you sense yourself, but they do not have to replace other faithful practices you hold. If you come from a background that finds these ideas strange, treat them as an invitation to experiment rather than an ultimatum. The goal here is not to make you an adherent to a system. The goal is to help you test, with your own body, whether an inner recognition surfaces. If you are ready, prepare a quiet moment. You will need only a few minutes and a willingness to be curious. Sit comfortably or stand if that is how you prefer to feel grounded. Start by settling your breath. Breathe in slowly and deliberately through the nose. Let the in-breath find a soft place in your belly. Allow your ribs to widen a touch. Breathe out softly through the mouth or nose, nothing forced. Do this 2 more times, slow and patient. The purpose of this breathing is practical. It shifts attention away from the relentless outer mind and opens a small, unguarded window to bodily sensation. Many people say the first and most important step in remembering is to steady the vessel. Now, with that steadied breath, place the fingers of your dominant hand on the base of your skull, where the skull meets the top of the neck. Not the back of the throat, but the region at the very base, just above the nape. Some will feel a slight fullness there, a subtle thickness, a little as if a small knot sits near the bone. Others feel nothing at all at first. This difference is expected. Describe to yourself what you notice. Is there a coolness, a warmth, a subtle pressure? Some report a sensation like a gentle humming or an impression of lineage, hard to put into words, because it is a memory that comes through sensation rather than thought. Remember, these are subjective indicators. They are not medical signs. They are personal, descriptive observations offered as a means to check. Do you notice anything? Many people who identify as pneumatic or awakened say this point at the base of the skull is where the thread of origin is threaded into the body. Next, extend the same hand so your palm faces up and focus on the lateral edge, the side of the hand between the little finger and the wrist. Rotate that hand slowly, as if you are tracing the contour of an object you cannot yet see. Feel for a subtle ridge or line that runs along that side. Some describe it as a small elevation, a fingertip width where the skin and bone align differently, a kind of line of reception. Others simply notice a difference in temperature or a faint electrical sensation when they imagine perception opening outward. Take your time. Notice whether moving the hand, flexing the wrist, or pressing gently alters the sensation. These variations are normal. Again, do not make a medical diagnosis. Use your senses to note what is unique about this area for you. Third, place your fingertips at the center of your chest, just above the sternum, where the breastbone meets the hollow above the heart, often called the upper chest or the external center. Press lightly and feel for any subtle resonance. A small heat, a sense of presence, a hollow that echoes when you breathe into it. This spot is described in the texts as the place of command, the center that can articulate and direct perception. Many report that when they touch this point and breathe into it with intent, a quiet clarity arises. Again, some feel this strongly, others weakly, and others not at all. The method relies on honest reporting. What do you feel right now? Notice how each location responds to breath and attention. If at any point a thought arises that says, "This is ridiculous," "I'm imagining things," or "This sounds dangerous," do not be surprised. This is the response the Gnostic language names as archontic interference. Not an external demon necessarily, but a patterned reflex to doubt the experience that points inward. When that voice arrives, do one thing and only one thing. Note it without argument. Call it archontic doubt in your mind if that label helps. Then gently return your attention to the body, to the place you were feeling. Observe the thought as if it were a passerby in a street. It appears, it comments, and it moves on. Do not engage it in debate. If you argue with doubt, you are giving it the oxygen it wants. Instead, keep your attention modestly but firmly on sensation. Now, before I give you the activation phrase, I will ask you to do one more small step. Rest both hands over the 3 points you have just explored. One hand at the base of the skull, one across the center of the chest, and allow the lateral hand to remain free to sense the side of the palm, or simply bring it to match the other hand if that feels more balanced. Close your eyes if that helps, or soften your gaze. Keep breathing with gentle, steady breaths. Notice the convergence of attention: one point of origin, one point of perception, and one point of command. Notice whether, as you hold these points, any shift, no matter how slight, occurs in the quality of your attention. When you are ready, say these words aloud. I recognize my origin. I activate my perception. I declare my command. Speak them clearly. You may speak them once or repeat them slowly 2 or 3 times. Use the sound of your voice. Let it vibrate in the chest as you say the phrase. For many listeners, the act of naming with the voice changes the resonance of inner sensation. It is simple. It is declarative. It is not a promise that the world will change outwardly, but it is an internal affirmation that aligns attention with the possibility of remembering. After speaking the phrase, remain with your hands where they are for a moment. Stay curious. See if a warmth grows, if a thread of recognition rises like a shape in fog. Some people report tears, a quiet laugh, a shiver, a sudden softening of fear. Others report simply a small clarity. A line that was previously blurred now feels less so. Whatever you feel, notice it without evaluation. Many who have experienced this process describe it as a reintroduction rather than a transformation. You are meeting a friend you once forgot. If, after doing this, you felt something, subtle or profound, consider leaving a one-word sign here in the comments. Type the word recognition. That word is not proof. It is a way for people who are exploring the same thread to find one another with minimal exposure. If you did not feel anything at all, that is also information. It may be that your nervous system is cautious or that further practice is needed. There is no merit in immediate results. The work here is not a competition, it is a practice of attention. Expect resistance in the hours and days after this simple activation. The archontic pattern does not like to be noticed. It will try to distract you with familiar narratives. You made this up. You are grasping at mystic fluff. This is a phase. When those voices surface, repeat the same basic strategy. Observe the thought, label it if that helps, and return to bodily checks. You might also find social resistance, friends or family who do not understand, spiritual communities who are suspicious, or institutions that categorize such experiences as problematic. Again, the counsel is humility and prudence. You do not need to wear this as a badge to provoke others. Protect the tenderness of your discovery and seek others gently. It is also important to pause on language. Words like monad, demiurge, archontes, and pneumatic carry with them a history. The monad here refers to the primordial source, the originating field of unbroken unity from which sparks emerge. The demiurge is the craftsman of the visible world who organizes matter and makes structure a dominant mode. Archontes are those patterning influences that favor distraction and identity with the constructed world. Pneumatic refers to those whose primary mode of orientation is spirit or inner recognition. These words are tools, not idols. Use them to map experience, not to confine it. You will ask, does recognition mean superiority? No. It means simply that you have encountered a mode of attention that remembers a line to source. It does not make you morally superior or more correct in every way. The warning in many of these teachings is against pride. Awakening that becomes a source of arrogance is a blockage in itself. Hold the experience with a quiet humility. A remembered origin invites tenderness toward oneself and toward others. There is also a communal dimension. The early texts imply that pneumatic persons, when they find one another, will feel an ease in conversation that feels like a soft return. If you find yourself moved to do so, consider seeking conversations with those who also use the language of recognition, not to prove yourself, but to practice clarity together. The single-word comment, recognition, was suggested here as a simple signal. Use it carefully. A community of practice can help calibrate experiences and provide safety, but it is optional. Awakening does not require publicity. Let us speak now in a small prayer form, a short address to the source, phrased as a humble orientation rather than a prescriptive ritual. You can say these words silently or aloud. Source, when memory is dim, touch the lamp within me. When structures close my gaze, loosen my hold. When doubt becomes a wall, send a small breeze of recall. I ask not for spectacle, but for the clarity to see and the grace to remain gentle. Amen. This is not a guarantee of miracles, but a consecration of intent. You are aligning your attention with a possibility. A few practical cautions. First, never treat these marks as medical diagnosis. If you experience physical pain, neurological symptoms, or anything that concerns your health, consult a qualified healthcare professional. The verifications we offer are experiential, not clinical. Second, do not expect immediate, dramatic transformations in your social life or material circumstances. Inner shifts can change how you respond to the world, but they do not automatically change external conditions. Third, keep a journal of what you notice. Over days and weeks, small changes can accumulate into significant recalibrations. If you have tried the verification and the activation phrase and something opened, you may wonder what comes next. The practical next steps are simple and practical. Continue to check the 3 points in daily, short sittings of 2 to 5 minutes. When archontic doubt arises, apply the observe and return strategy. Cultivate humility and service, using whatever clarity you gain to act with compassion. Seek readings and communities that honor both historical nuance and embodied practice. Be cautious of any group that demands exclusivity, dramatic renunciations, or payments as proof of further awakening. The tradition these texts represent values inner verification precisely because it dissolves dependency. Remember, you are being prevented from awakening not because you lack worth or because you are inherently closed off, but because a historically situated system, composed of social, psychological, and yes, metaphysical elements, exists to shape attention outward. The method I have shared aims to reverse that shaping in small measures: breath, touch, voice, and a naming. If you choose to practice this method over time, you may find your attention habitually moving toward interior evidence rather than external validation. That is the practical aim of anamnesis, memory that returns. This teaching sits within a Gnostic frame. I name that explicitly because it matters to avoid conflation. Gnostic perspectives were one stream among many in the early centuries of spiritual conversation. They provide tools and images that can be deeply useful for some and unsettling for others. Approach this material as a practice to be tested in your life, not as dogma to be accepted at once. If you felt anything at all, the faintest hum, a softening, the slightest increase in clarity, type recognition in the comments to signal, gently, that this thread resonates for you. That small communal gesture can help others know they are not alone. If you did not feel anything, that too is part of the path. The practice can be repeated and refined. Do not chastise yourself for absence. Finally, return to the title that began this conversation and let it land again. You are being prevented from awakening. I say it not to frighten, but to clarify. Obstacles exist. Some are external, some are internal, and most are subtle and slow-acting. The remedy is not a single heroic move, but the steady cultivation of attention. Simple acts repeated: breath, touch, naming, open remembered pathways. This is not about joining a secret club. It is about recovering an ability to see and act from within. If you want to continue, subscribe to this channel for deeper activation sequences and careful, historically grounded teachings on remembrance and practice. We will explore texts, practices, and community boundaries with care and caution. For now, keep the practice small. Breathe, check, name. Hold what you discover with humility. And remember that awakening, when it comes, is first a matter of recognition within the body, and then a rearrangement of how you move through the world. May your attention find its way back home. May curiosity remain steadier than shame. May the quiet voice that says, "You are not alone," become louder than the doubts that once hid it.